Hi, I'm Renee Seltzer, founder of Feeding My Kid, and in today's episode, I'd like to introduce you to Tammy Bishop, who's an occupational therapist and feeding specialist. So she's going to be able to answer your questions that we often get through Facebook and on the website. So I'm really excited to introduce her. So she's going to go through and just answer a variety of questions, provide insights that we don't often have, and just being an occupational therapist, she's going to be able to see and help us understand, when is it that you need to see an occupational therapist? I'm so excited to be covering all these topics with her, and let's get started. What are some of the other bad habits that parents could avoid when feeding their kids?
Eating on the run, not a good idea. Even if you can only eat for 15 minutes, sit down as a family if you can at the table. Don't stand up at the kitchen counter. Kids should be sitting in appropriately sized chairs, for their body size. They shouldn't be sitting in chairs with their legs hanging. Some other bad habits that we can try to get rid of.
I know one, not letting your kid take a bite and then run off to play and then take a bite.
Staying seated,
I think is a really big one.
Yes, and that's a tough one, especially if the child's not used to is not used to having to sit at the table.
Yeah.
And then making that transition to, okay, now you have to sit at the table. You're definitely going to get some refusal.
I went to a seminar with Tammy, and there was a parent that was telling me that she would just chase her child down on toys or on anything just to get him to take another bite.
Right.
And I thought, something doesn't sound right about that.
No, that's not good. So poor mom, it's too much work for her.
Yeah. And then, if you think about it, because the child's intermittently eating, they're never going to get hungry, or they're never going to get too full because they're always just grazing.
Right, that's right.
And so I would say grazing is a really bad habit. So I know we talked about don't let them snack in between,
right,
but they need to sit down. I have on the site some articles on eating opportunities, and if you don't eat within this window, then the consequence is you're hungry until the next window.
Yes.
And really important to do that. So if you notice that your child is just eating and grazing throughout the day, pull back. Only let them eat at these opportunities. Because one of the things with grazing is, again, they're never going to get hungry enough. They're never going to get full enough. And they're never going to actually learn to read the hunger and fullness cues of their belly. Right? Because you really have to feel hungry.
Yes.
You have to get pretty hungry to feel hungry.
Yep.
And then you have to get full to feel, for your body to be like, oh, that's what full feels like.
Yes.
Also, just inherently with grazing, you end up eating too many either empty calories, because the type of food that you graze on is usually empty calories, and you're also potentially teaching your child how to eat out of boredom, right? I think that's kind of all the habits that come with it. So you're really not setting your child up to be a healthy lifelong eater, as you are just teaching your child, hey, you're bored, you're lonely, you're sad, here's some crackers.
Right.
And it's unintentional, right?
Right, it is. A lot of us do it.
Yeah.
A lot of us do it.
So kind of tell me some unintentional things that maybe parents are doing alongside that.
I would say a big one is milk. Giving their children either milk or juice, or Pediasure in between meals and snacks. And what happens is it fills up the child's tummy.
Yeah.
And so just like grazing on food, drinking does the same thing. Drinking throughout the day, all throughout the day can do the same thing.
The crazy thing about milk is, one, if you drink too much milk, you could become anemic because it actually stops your body's absorption of iron. So there is some people who really, and then you don't realize milk, dairy, yogurts, cheese sticks, that's a tremendous amount of dairy that your child is ingesting in that day. So again, you worry through iron absorption. The other part of that is milk is really filling, right? So you're probably not going to get hungry enough.
Right.
And then they have these studies that show that if you drink a lot of milk throughout the day, if the child does, they end up ingesting 50% less calories. Because then they're not eating enough, they're not eating enough of a meal, so maybe they'll pick their one or two favorite things, but they don't feel adventurous to try number 3.
Right.
So not a big fan of milk in between meals. So you can get it, my kids know that they only get it after a meal. Here's some water.
Yep, that's right, yep.
And as an adult, really the best thing you could drink is water, so
right.
we kind of create those healthy habits, because I want, when they're 40, to have these healthy habits.
Right.
Okay, what do you recommend to parents that when they go to play dates or they go to sporting events, there's just tons of junk food and it kind of ruins their appetite for the next meal?
It depends, because if you don't have any other options for food other than the hot dogs or the hamburgers or the chicken fingers, if it's during a mealtime, then that's what you eat. That's what you have available. But if it's in between a meal and a snack time, then I would say hold off and tell the child they can have something at mealtime.
That's perfect. So even if their friends are eating, sorry, you got to hold off. And I think that the beauty too of these meal times and being really kind of consistent with them is that the meal time, these eating opportunities are the, I want to say, how do I want to say this? The meal times are set in stone, so that means that they don't need to argue with you. If you're consistent, they know, well, that's it. We have to wait until noon.
Right.
So really use that to your advantage.
There are going to be times in our life where it comes up where we're invited to enjoy some food with friends or whatever, and it's not during one of our optimal times. We do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of socializing, so that if your child is at a birthday party in between, snack time and dinner, and the kids are eating cupcakes, then your child has a cupcake. I mean, you can't say to your child, no, you can't have a cupcake because it's not dinner time yet. So you have to kind of pick your battles, but in general, you want to be consistent with the times and try to avoid the out of meal and out of snack time eating.
Well, that kind of goes back to the first rule: make it enjoyable. So if you're at a birthday party and everyone else is eating cupcakes and you're all of a sudden just saying, no, you cannot eat cupcakes, that's not enjoyable.
Right.
So if you really kind of follow the first rule of enjoyment, then I think everything else just kind of goes.
Right.
I will say the caveat of enjoyment is don't take eating and feeding shortcuts just to make today's dinner that enjoyable, where you'll pay the price later on. So can you elaborate a little bit on how parents sometimes make it easier on today's dinner and then they kind of pay for it later?
That reminds me of using a reward system. So a parent might say, if you eat this, I'll give you that. Well, what happens is the child learns that that's how a meal goes, and so it really comes back to bite the parent, because then the parent's expected to reward the child for every bite that the child takes. So that's one thing I would avoid doing.
Well, that, and I try not to offer dessert at every meal, or at every dinner. But I also offer them the dessert no matter if they eat or they don't eat. So eating is not a condition of getting the brownie or whatever it is. How do you feel about any kind of sticker charts or anything to get kids to?
Most of the feeding therapists most of the books that I've read from the feeding therapists recommend not using any reward system. Basically, you teach the child to enjoy eating, so that you don't have to use a reward system. But I have to say, as a feeding therapist, there are times when I feel that the child can handle a reward system, not a system necessarily, but at the moment I might say, yes, you can have more of this if you take another bite of that. And so maybe I'm wrong doing that, but I feel like in the moment it's going to work, and it's not something I'm going to have to keep doing over and over again.
Yeah, so I guess just occasionally if you did it would be fine, but if you make it a system, then the child really grows to expect that.
Right.
And I think what happens too is when they grow to expect that, they don't eat that food because they want to. They're just eating that food to get something from you.
Exactly. Yep.
I guess another one, and this is a mistake that I did, was that really celebrating every bite because I was so excited they were eating, and then I realized that becomes almost emotional, pressure to get that.
Yep.
Or this is how it becomes pressure is if the child doesn't eat it, I don't get excited. So then they feel pressure to really eat the food to get my enthusiasm.
It's a reward system, basically.
Yeah, it's a reward, and I didn't realize. I was just so excited. But what do you say to that when people are just introducing foods to their baby? How do you best introduce it?
Well, I definitely don't recommend that they go, woohoo! We used to do that, or I used to recommend doing that, but what happens not only with the reward system that Renee talked about, where the child becomes almost fearful of not getting the praise, is also that some children don't respond well to praise, so that it's almost like the control thing that, if I eat something, then mom praises me, and I don't want mom to praise me, and, it becomes a control situation. So, or just a child might be bashful, and any kind of hoopla is just too much excitement for them. So it's just...
The fascinating thing, there's actually one other one too. If a child really loves the affection that they get from that, they can learn to become an overeater because now they desperately want that, and they're not listening to their cues anymore. They're trying to get that praise.
Right.
So those actually, the kids that have the most mild temperament, there is these studies that show they struggle with it the most because they become overeaters.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of fascinating.
Yes, that is.
So your super chill kid is super chill, and when you pressure them, they're just happy to go along with it, and then they can become overeaters.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
well,
Yep. And so just the best thing to do is just to very calmly say, nice job touching the beans, or nice job tasting the carrots.
so
Just
really,
that you're recognizing that
Yeah.
the effort, but that you're not making it some big deal.
so even not even talking about you eating it, but just touching it,
Mhm,
right? So maybe
absolutely.
you touch on different aspects of it.
Sure. For example, a child who has difficulty even looking at a food, or having a food on their plate. You know, if once you put the spoonful of peas on their plate and the child's okay with that, then you say, nice job sitting there and being okay with the peas there. Or, great job looking at the carrots underneath the napkin, as you lift up the napkin quickly to show them the carrots. And just recognizing nonchalantly that they've made a good step.
So that doesn't reinforce the bad behavior that they should be nervous about the peas?
I don't believe so, no, because you want them to recognize that what they've done is a step up, like they're making progress.
Okay.
Because when they do it and you don't recognize it, then it's kind of like it may not register to them.
Okay.
But if you say and bring their attention to, oh yeah, I did look at the peas. Oh yeah, it wasn't that bad.
Oh, there you go.
Then
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So they recognize the situation, and then hopefully you can build on that.
Okay, so they're just being more present too.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
The peas didn't get me.
Yes.
What do you think about this one when doctors say they have to be completely sitting up straight?
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes not preemies, but like some kids don't have a great, they can't,
Right. The support.
the support.
Mhm.
Do you feel like they just have to wait until they're 8 or 9 months or 10 months until they can?
I mean, usually with the high chair, you want them mostly up, but they shouldn't have to struggle, because then our thought as OTs is if you're not strong here, then like your fine motor muscles aren't able to work so well because your body's focusing so much on trying to just stay upright.
Yeah.
So like for babies who don't have good trunk control, we all recommend that they be back a little bit, but not too far back.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But just
Okay.
enough so that they're supported, they can relax so that they can eat.
So do you think instead of waiting until they're 8 or 9 months, that maybe the parents kind of pack them in a little bit more?
For sure. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Because I get parents all the time, well, my doctor told me to wait. And I'm like, you're really missing out on those opportunities to taste the food, to get exposed. Because they're a lot more open as they're younger, right?
Right.
So around 6 months, they'll pretty much be open to any flavor.
Yeah.
But if you start waiting and waiting and they never got exposed to it and you only start at 9 months, I think they're going to really struggle with food.
Right.
So hands down, if you support them so that they don't have to wobble and they
Right.
can think about eating,
Yes.
go ahead and do that versus wait.
Yeah, you can use little pillows, blankets rolled up,
Okay, fabulous.
and also make sure that their feet are supported.
Yes, that's a big one. So the same thing when the kids' feet are kind of just moving around, they don't stay in a chair as long, and they're not concentrated as much when they're eating. So if you don't want a fidgety kid, make sure use a yellow page, use whatever you have, or buy a chair with feet support. They'll eat better for you. That's something I learned too.
Yep.
We had to go get new chairs. So we bought these chairs, and Tammy comes over and she looks at them, and my daughter's laying back like this. And she's just completely slouching. And I'm like, my son pulled up and he was fine, but she always slouched in that chair. And I'm like, something's just not right there. And we had to go get different chairs just to support the feet and to make sure that she was standing straight up to be a better eater. And voila, it made a huge impact
Good.
right away.
Yep, good.
So now we have extra chairs.
It's good for parties.
Yeah, exactly. So fabulous. Food in general,
Oh, I did
right?
want to mention about you're talking about introducing flavors at a younger age.
Yes.
So there is research to show that a baby can sense different flavor within the amniotic fluid.
Yes, I have articles and videos about that.
And the breast milk, mom's breast milk. So that if mom eats a fairly bland diet, then the baby's milk will also be bland. So a mom who eats lots of herbs and spices, then that gets
Eat lots of garlic.
Yes. So that also gets transported through the mother's milk into the baby's mouth, and so the baby tastes it. So when you do start to introduce table foods, then the child is more accustomed to varying flavors.
So it's fascinating that they're starting to study this and starting to realize it. I will say that the caveat, if formula, it has one note, it always tastes the same. So, but when you're breastfeeding, whatever you're eating, it's going to change. Like when I nursed, my milk turned green when I ate a big salad.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, so then they're eating arugula too.
That's awesome.
And because I did a lot of pumping, I got to actually see it a lot. And I'm like, oh, it's red today. Those beets worked.
Oh,
But
that's
I didn't
too
know at
funny.
first. I'm like, what is going But the one thing is great that there's all these things out there that if you introduce solids, you must go through these 5 vegetables first, but don't give any fruits, and that's going to make an impact. I don't know. It sounds fishy, and I would say that eat a huge variety of foods while you're pregnant, huge variety of foods while you're nursing, and then just introduce a big variety of foods.
Right. There are babies though who do have a preference for either the vegetables or the fruits. So what I would recommend doing is perhaps taking a little bit, so let's say if the child or the baby wants to eat mostly pureed fruits and no vegetables, what I would recommend then is taking a little bit of vegetable and introducing it to the fruit puree, and so that the child gets a change in flavor. They still have the sweetness from the fruit, but there's a little bit of that savory vegetable mixed in. And so what you do is you gradually add more and more vegetable to the point where the child can handle or can tolerate all the vegetable.
So you're slowly conditioning them. Right? One little trick, especially when they start to eat solids, is roasting vegetables. It takes the bitterness and makes them sweeter.
Yep.
So if you get peppers, just roast it and then peel the skin off. And give them to your kids, but they'll actually enjoy them more because it actually brings out more sweetness.
I enjoy roasted vegetables more than than raw vegetables.
So what do you say about texture? Because I think texture is a really big issue for a lot of kids. How do you help overcome it? Can you explain why, like in a pear, there's a hard skin on the outside and then a softer inside, and kids struggle with that?
It depends. Well, so for any child who's transitioning away from a smooth puree to texture is going to feel the difference. What we want to see is that the children recognize that there's a change, but are okay with that change, or maybe not initially okay with it, but gradually become more accustomed to it, but in a fairly quick manner. There are children, though, once they have a new texture, refuse it significantly. They want nothing to do with it, no matter how many times the mother introduces this. And so that's usually when we recommend therapy, because then the child has to be, we have to look to make sure there's nothing medically going on. Orally, does the child have the skills to handle the texture that you're introducing? And also, is there a sensory issue going on, sensory processing issue, where the child maybe tactily, touch-wise, can't handle the texture?
I was going to say, so I actually have sensory processing. I never knew it.
We all do. It's
good. It's really fascinating. As I read more for kids, I'm like, oh, that's what makes me so weird. I can't handle sounds or touches or feelings. Any kind of texture to me is odd. But the interesting thing with my own kids too is when we were talking, it was texture of fruit, because it's a little bit slimy when you cut it, is we went dehydrated. So once we went dehydrated, it was more crunchy, more like a chip. And I got them to eat strawberries dehydrated and then transition them eventually
That's
to
a great
regular
idea.
strawberries. So, but we had to transition everything. It was not a smooth go with our kids. And I do actually blame a little bit that we did a lot of prepackaged baby food. And we stayed on the baby food too long. Do you want to kind of cover that? Because I don't think a lot of people know that stage 1 baby food, you should only be on it for a few weeks. But people stay on it. I stayed on it until 11 months.
Right.
I didn't know.
Yep. So the puree, when the baby comes off of the mother's milk or the formula and you start to introduce the puree, you want to make sure that before you move from puree to texture that your baby can handle it. So you're going to give them very soft pieces of fruit or vegetable that don't have skin or 2 different textures. You want it to be like a banana, for example, a very soft banana, where you can mash it up, and so it almost becomes puree, but it still has a little bit of texture. The age at which you do this is going to depend on your child's skills and how well they can handle that change. So there's really no, at 6 months you must be on table food or start to transition from puree to table food. So it really depends, and if you have any questions, you can ask your pediatrician, you can ask a speech therapist, because some of them have special training with oral motor skills. You can ask an occupational therapist who has training with the oral motor skills, and just find out if your baby's ready for the transition, if you find that your baby's having difficulty.
What would difficulty look like?
Spitting out the food, crying, gagging, vomiting.
Okay. So when a baby first gets introduced to food and spits it all out, what is that? Is that a reflex, or are they just not a fan of the food?
It could be if the baby doesn't like the texture, if the texture is new, the child or the baby may spit it out. What you don't do is say, okay, well, baby doesn't like that, I'm not going to give that to him anymore. What you have to do is just keep reintroducing it and see if the baby changes, or the baby's reaction changes. If the baby's reaction stays the same, then you need to find out what about the food is causing that, or what about your baby is making him do that.
Okay. That's great advice, because a lot of times people are like, oh, they just don't like sweet potato, then they stop offering it. Well, a lot of that face that babies make when they first get the food is because it's a weird sensation in their mouth. They've only had fluids up until now, right?
Right.
So kind of help parents understand just the experience of the baby.
Exactly.
You know? It's all new for them. So
It is.
Do you want to just kind of walk through when they first get food, how is that for them? Like, what are their, experience of it?
I mean, I can only assume. I don't know for sure, but they're big changes, like you just mentioned, about going from liquid to then a thickened liquid. Usually, parents add cereal to formula or breast milk, and so there are transitions. And some babies handle it better than others. Others, it takes a little bit of time for them to be accustomed to the changes. And then there are the babies that I work with and the children who have a really hard time transitioning between those stages.
So when I was at that seminar, there was another little boy, and he was 4, and he only drank smoothies. I don't know if you remember him, but he never ate any actual food, so straight smoothies. How do you get a kid like that to start eating?
Well, I would use the desensitizing program that Dr. Kay Toomey teaches, and that is to introduce the solid foods in a non-threatening and non-pressured environment.
Okay.
So get him to start playing. Because you don't want to jump from his drinking smoothies to, or you shouldn't expect him to go from drinking smoothies to putting a piece of broccoli in his mouth, chewing it and swallowing it. So what I would do is just get him able to play with the food first, be able to touch it, see where he is with his comfort level around the food, and then start to work on progressing those steps closer to getting him to eat.
That's fat. It's a great advice. I often get parents that think that their kids are just going to outgrow this, but I have met a million adults who are picky eaters with textures and eat a very small amount of food, generally the unhealthier foods. What do you say to parents when they say, my kid's just going to outgrow it?
I often tell parents a story of a 16-year-old that I'm working with who, for the first time a couple weeks ago, put a kernel of corn in his mouth, chewed it, and swallowed it. That they don't grow out of it. This is a 16-year-old whose family sought out feeding therapy because his not eating was affecting his social life. So there are children, this goes back to advice people will give you about your child's picky eating. And I've heard from many families that someone will say, well, just let them starve. They'll eat eventually. There are children. I just want to warn parents out there that there are children. And if you're a parent of this child, I do feel badly for you. And you really do need to seek out occupational therapy for help. There are children who will starve themselves, who will absolutely eat nothing if they're not given some food that is safe for them. So I just want people to know that if you're a person who says to another parent, well, just starve him, or just don't give him what he wants until he's, when he's hungry, he'll eat what you give him. That is not the case. That is not the case.
And I was going to say that goes back to if you give them the food, let's go back to it's a lasagna or a casserole, and your child's not going to eat it. Well, just to sit there and watch the food that they're not going to eat is a form of pressure. It's not an enjoyable experience for your child. They kind of sit there, they look at the food, they're like, I'm not going to eat it. And it just makes it all not enjoyable. So really having that safe food, if they liked cream of corn, make sure the cream of corn is there so they feel like I could still eat something. And then that pressure goes down. And what you're doing is you're conditioning them that there's always something I could eat at the table. The table is a safe place to go.
Yep.
It's not going to be stressful. No one's going to say that I have to eat the lasagna. I could just eat the cream of corn. And I know if it's bread, whatever that safe food is, I know there's one thing I'm going to be able to eat. So I think that's really just important, that you don't kind of play that battle of wills, because kids, they will do things, to win the battle of wills. So that's really a great thing. And I think just the safe foods in general, anything to make it, I think, less stressful without being the parent that gives in to the chicken nuggets every night. right? So you don't want to make it so not stressful on yourself that you're just going to give your child a few foods that they're going to eat, because you still want to serve what the family is eating. I think that's really important.
Yep. I also recommend, and this comes from other feeding therapists that I've heard mention, that it's really a great idea to alternate the child's preferred food so that you don't have them eating chicken nuggets every night for dinner.
Yes, the rotation rule, right?
Yes, so try to rotate the food as much as possible. And so there are children who eat only chicken nuggets. And so what Dr. Toomey recommends is changing the chicken nuggets so that it's not the same every time, so that you might cut it just once and make it into 2 sticks, or you might cut it into cut it 2 times and make it into 4 squares. So she recommends changing it so that the food's not the same every time.
So we have videos on the rotation rule that Tammy just mentioned, and gateway foods or food chaining. And that was in the video. We cover, okay, we'll buy a different brand of chicken nuggets. So what you're doing is slowly transitioning them to different. I make a real point that my kids never eat the same kind of pasta. So they eat bow tie, they eat lasagna, they eat linguine, and I just rotate them all so they see them once in a while, but they never get used to, I could only eat spaghetti.
Yes.
So there's definitely kids who I could only eat spaghetti, that's the only pasta I'll eat. Well, let's start rotating through. Linguine is a little bit wider, or angel hair is a little bit thinner, so start transitioning of the foods that they're already comfortable with, make small changes to those foods, and then kind of move the barge that way.
Yes, and that reminds me, there are also children who are brand specific, so that if you
I learned that one the hard way.
If they eat only, say, a certain kind of macaroni and cheese, and they see that it comes from the box or the container, if you try to introduce a new one, they're not going to eat it because it's not the one that they're used to.
So this is actually just for especially the parents who are have real little ones, never let them see the box. This is something I learned with like yogurt, those little containers, it has to be this yogurt. So then I started buying Greek yogurt and putting it in there. Just don't do it. Try to avoid any type of box. So if it comes in a little Greek yogurt container, put it into a bowl. So always transition the food out of whatever container it came in so they don't become brand specific. It's the best advice I can give. And then so if they're really just bent on, I will only eat this kind of mac and cheese, what do you recommend for that?
Starting to change the flavor just a little bit.
Okay.
So maybe adding more milk instead of, or adding more milk in place of water, adding a little bit of butter to it, or if change the oil that you put in it. Some people put oil in it, some people put butter, so you can flip-flop it. Add a little bit of spice or herb to it. Herbs are tough because you can see them, and so children usually who are picky eaters, if they notice anything in their food, they're not eating it. So I would recommend something that you can put into it that changes the flavor but doesn't change the look.
Powder, maybe?
Garlic powder. I'm
Powder.
thinking like a mustard, just a tiny bit of mustard to put a little tanginess into it, because that's yellow, and usually the mac and cheese is kind of like an orange yellow. So yeah, I would change it just slightly though, because usually the kids who are picky eaters can detect like minute changes to the food. So you have to be really careful, because you don't want to scare them away from their safe food.
Yeah. Because
for kids who do have a very limited diet, it's not safe to have them start dropping those foods.
Okay, so that's really a great point. And then, like I said, so if you have real little ones and you haven't gone down this path, you don't want to go down this path, because it's a hard path to change, and it's a lot of strategic thinking by the parents, right? So you really have to, I think maybe one of the things that we talked about, and we have a Gateway Foods planner that you could just print out, and it allows you to write down all your foods. Do you want to kind of touch on that, of why a parent wants to catalog everything a child eats?
Well, sure, because then you could, not just for knowing or keeping track of what your child's eating, but also helps you to rotate the food, because you can say, well, Monday night we had this, so Tuesday night we're going to have that. But another great thing for cataloging the food is that if you ever have to go seek therapy, a therapist is going to ask you what your child eats and what your child doesn't eat. So it's nice to have that to give to them. Yeah,
so definitely watch the video, because I cover all of that. But one of the fabulous things about it, your child may eat more foods than you think they do. Because the potato is, if it's in wedges or French fries or mashed potato, they're all different potatoes, right?
That's true.
So, really kind of think about what kinds of different chickens do your kids eat? These long chicken fingers? Do they eat chicken nuggets? Go ahead and write down some of that, because they're a little bit different. And then your therapist could say, oh no, those are too similar. or no, that's great. But definitely mashed potato and a French fry, totally different foods, even though they're both potato.
Yep, that's a great point. Yep.
Yeah. So really something. Once you start doing it, you're like, oh, my kid does eat more than I thought he does, and then you feel good about it. So what do you do? Okay, so the kids explore those different flavors of the mac and cheese. What is the goal? Is the goal to transition them off to a different box? Is it homemade mac and cheese? Where do you stop that transition in the mac and cheese?
Where do you stop the transition? I think it depends on the child and the family. What are they looking for? If it's a family who can only do packaged mac and cheese, then perhaps you venture out into different kinds of packaged mac and cheese. If it's a family who does a lot of home cooking, then you're going to want to start to transition the child from the packaged mac and cheese to the home cooking or the home cooked mac and cheese. And so that depends on it could depend on so many variables, on the shape of the pasta, because you could possibly add a little bit of homemade pasta or mac and cheese into the processed mac and cheese. Sometimes having the children make the mac and cheese with you, we talked about this before, about having the child involved, may help them or motivate them to eat the homemade mac and cheese. It just depends on the child.
Yeah.
That's why even if you think your child has a very mild feeding difficulty, even consulting with an occupational therapist, you can really get some good ideas and some strategies on what works best just for your child. Because oftentimes when you read books and things on the internet, it's more general. And so children are all different. So if you want help specifically for your child, the best way is to get a therapist or a professional who does feeding therapy to help you.
Yeah, can't agree with that one more. How do you feel about hiding vegetables?
So I kind of flip-flop with the hiding the vegetables. I think it's a really cool idea that you can hide. There's a cookbook, and I forgot the name of it.
Seinfeld?
Sneaky Chef, I think it
Sneaky
is.
Chef,
Sneaky.
and then Seinfeld's wife also has one.
Okay.
Deceptively Delicious.
Yes,
Yeah.
maybe that's. I'm sorry, I'm not sure which book it is, but there's a recipe in there, a brownie recipe that has spinach and blueberries in it.
Yeah.
And someone made this for me, and I tried it, and I thought, wow, this is incredible. I can't believe that you really can't taste the spinach and the blueberries if it's done correctly. So I'm kind of a fan of that, but then also if you do hide vegetables in your child's food and the child discovers that, then there's this mistrust. The child doesn't trust you because they're afraid you're going to put something into their safe food. So it depends on the child.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a really good point about losing trust, because a lot of feeding issues happen to do with trust. Like, do I trust that you're not going to pressure me to eat this? Do I trust that you're not going to try to bait and switch me with what, you get pizza, but now you have to have kale too.
Right.
So trust is really a big part of it. I would say the other side of hiding vegetables is they never learn to eat those foods on their own because they don't really know that spinach is in the brownies. So if you're gonna do that, and I do it just because I actually try to, in meatballs I put a lot of stuff in it because I try to displace the meat, right? So I just want to have more healthy foods along with my meat than just the meatballs. But I always offer the food alongside it. So if I'm going to put salmon in the mac and cheese, they have a piece of salmon. If I'm going to do cauliflower, I do a lot of cauliflower and things, but I always offer it alongside it too. I've yet to get them to try cauliflower, but I will. They're going to learn to love it because they eat it all the time.
Yeah, right.
So they get the flavor of it, but yeah, that's my biggest thing is just make sure you serve it alongside it too.
Right. Yep. That's a great idea.
That's the same thing with those purees, those fruit purees for the baby food. If you ever look at the ingredients, they'll never often say on the front cover there's apple, but there's almost always apple on the inside. And they actually found there's a very, very small amount of vegetable in most of those. They got sued. So all of your big brands got sued because they, on the pictures, it looks like there's tons of vegetables, but it's really just pear and apple. And so just something to keep in mind, but that baby isn't learning how to eat any of those foods because it's overwhelmingly being covered up by apple and pear.
Yep, just like the juices.
Yeah, exactly. So just something to think about when you're giving those foods, that taste it yourself, and if it tastes really, really sweet, you're not tasting any of those vegetables. So they're not learning to appreciate them or like them.
Right.
Tammy, I'd like to really thank you for today. This was so informative. It was amazing.
You're welcome.
So
You're welcome.
We're very lucky to have her. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask the questions in the comments below. So we'll shoot them back to Tammy and see if she has any additional advice for you. She has amazing articles on feedingmykid.com, so make sure you check that out. We have tons of articles and ideas on Pinterest, and we share them on Twitter and Facebook, so be sure to follow all of that. And we look forward to our next series.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I look forward to hearing from you.
All right, have a good one. And if you're in the Orlando area and you need an occupational therapist, Tammy is your gal.
No, thank you. Thanks, Renee.
All right, thanks everyone.